Let's see here. I think maybe we might be live. Maybe. Ladies and gentlemen, Canoga Park, California, 5:30 p.m., December 1st, 2022. Today we've got the one and only Papa Juan Gallo in the house. Not only is he a meme lord of the Western Hemisphere, but he's also Western.
I think it's worldwide.
I think so.
That's true.
But that's okay. Continue.
Not only is
Please
he a worldwide meme lord, but he's also a 20-year service member, Navy pilot, serving multiple tours in Iraq. And today we're going to talk about bikes, life, combat, PTSD, all that stuff. And I came down with something. I'm sick as shit, and I cannot talk. So I'm going to leave it to you boys today.
Well, that didn't stop you from going to the desert last week.
Right.
There it is.
Sure didn't.
There it is.
Galen and I just flew in, and boy, are our arms tired.
Yes.
Jesus, here we go.
Hey,
wait, subscribe to our...
Also, this episode is brought to you by Eagle Rider Motorcycle Rentals and Tours.
Hey, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tell your friends to do that. We have a great show today. Hope you've been watching the Southern Comfort Tour, because that's been really great. Some of our favorite videos.
So what, we have one more drop left, Josh, on that?
Yeah, we have, let's see, we just dropped the one out to Churchill Downs, and then we have, Smiley's Garage.
That'll be good.
It's a little bit shorter, but it's a really, really cool episode. And then after that, we got a little something before we start dropping the Page, Arizona. Like I'm firing off one cylinder today.
One cylinder.
Single brain cell.
Well, I'd like to, while we have him here, thank Juan, because we actually had scheduled this a couple weeks ago, and fortunately for us, Harley gave us a call at kind of late notice last Wednesday and said, hey, we need you in town. And so we just got back in from Milwaukee today, and boy, what a trip that was.
And we ended up in Minnesota in a full blizzard and they canceled all the flights once we landed, so the next flight was like midnight, so we rented a car and drove 5 hours.
Leave it to you guys.
Right.
Yeah. Jump in a car right through a blizzard.
Planes,
Of course.
trains,
Why
and
wouldn't you?
automobiles.
Pretty standard.
Yes, and we did have dinner in a
insane.
really cool little family cafe, and then after that, of course, we were in the parking lot. And right when my son Lance calls to just say, hey, you guys, every time you go to Milwaukee, something happens, he's in the middle of this little intersection in the parking lot doing donuts in the car. So,
Standard.
So we were freewheeling out there.
Well, I hadn't done that for a long time.
It was great.
I grew up in Salt Lake.
You
where
wanted
the
to
snow,
do
so
it.
I needed to get going there.
I don't do snow, man. No. No. I like to ski. I like to get to a mountain that has snow on it. No snow on the road.
No.
Right.
Get there, ski, get back in a car.
We've done a lot of snow.
No.
I have to tell you, that it was pretty gnarly coming out of the city because they'd closed the actual airport down.
Yeah.
And there were probably 2 feet of snow that we were kind of trudging through.
Unplowed, just...
No way. No.
And then we thought we were going to get out of it, and it just kept snowing and snowing, and it was 22 degrees.
No, thank you.
And the roads were kind of wet, so there's some black ice we're going through. It was pretty gnarly.
We did some really cool stuff with Harley in a really cool warehouse, but we were warm in there.
Yeah, we were out at the state fairgrounds, and there's that mile track, dirt track that's out there, and it's going to be pretty dope. On the 18th of January, watch for that drop.
Yeah.
That's from Harley?
It's from Harley.
Wow, that's awesome.
So we're blessed, and thanks Matt Swedlin for setting that up and calling us, and the rest of the crew that...
Brad Richards got to hang out with him.
That was fun, yep.
He was on our show just a couple months back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the drops have been going great. We love that part of the country, Tennessee, Kentucky. If you haven't been out there, that's a place you got to go ride. I don't know if you watched any of them, but it was insane. And we were on the Eagle Rider bikes. We caught it just at the right time. Could have been maybe even a week later, but the colors were beautiful, and the roads were certainly clear, and we got it during the week. So like Tail of the Dragon, no cops, and Josh was able to kind of rip it a little bit faster.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, that was cool.
We had wives on the back, but I was doing a little faster than I normally do with Teresa on the back, and she was like, no problem.
Right. No.
Normally she's like,
it depends what vibe they're feeling. If they're feeling good and it's a nice day.
In other words, how many drinks did you give them
Yeah.
the morning before you go? Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
That has happened.
Right.
But last time I saw you, you were heading into Mexico with Lance and Juan. And
we did. A fairly uneventful. We didn't get arrested or anything.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
I was kind of worried about those two.
our prior guest did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know. I think
He had a rough time in there, but
yes, he did.
what a guy too. I mean, he mentally pushed through it,
Yeah.
you know, and started making some friends and comrades and whatever.
And
make
learn
it
not
work.
to go back there and do that again.
Right.
Yeah. Turns out that if you F around down there,
Yeah.
You find out
you're
down
gonna
there.
find out at some point.
Right.
Well, and then
Oh.
Jeff was here last week or a week and a half ago, and he was like, "I'm not going back down there."
Yeah.
You know, so it's like I think they're kind of done with
I
it.
mean, if you go down there to be a hooligan,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I would.
But it's
do
a
it.
fun place to go. I mean, you've got, you know, seafood and you've got drinks and you've got, you know, places you can go that are fun at night.
Right.
Yeah.
Be out on the beach, whatever. I mean, it's
Yeah.
So
I
it's
just
kind
ride
of a-
normal. The only time I ever had any issue, I went down there a couple years, a year and a half ago or so, and I always told myself, okay, just get back to the border before the sun goes down.
Right. Right.
Because, you know, like either stay there overnight, just stay, or get back to the border before the sun goes down. Well, the beers were tasting really good on the beach, and the tacos were tasting really good, and we didn't even leave out of Rosarito until the sun was going down. And I know one specific way to get to the secret little spot to cross the border. And so coming through TJ, and I go through the first roundabout, like, okay, we're good. And then I get to the next roundabout, and the road's closed.
blocked off.
I'm like, oh man, this is not good. You know, and so they're directing like, okay, you got to go this way, go this way. I'm like, I don't know where to go.
And you're on your motorcycle.
On the motorcycle, yeah. And if I hadn't had beers on the beach all day, I would have probably just realized that the GPS is going to tell me
Correct,
exactly
yeah.
where I need to go, but no. So we're sitting there, it's just me and one other buddy, and I see this motorcycle food delivery guy go ripping through, and then goes over this sidewalk median and takes off this way. And I'm like, oh, it looks like we can get through there. You know, and so I'm on the big bagger, and you know, so going over this median sidewalk thing, and I get to the other side, and even in my state at the time, I was like, this is not a good idea.
Right.
So I immediately turn around, come back around, and as soon as I get back over that median, there's a cop, like, you know,
The federale or
local, even worse, and
Right.
so they pulled me over, and this lady, she's like, all right, well, you know, you broke whatever law, and it's $500 per bike, or we're going to impound them. I'm like, no. And I can speak enough Spanish, you know, so I started speaking to her in Spanish a little bit. I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. She's like, well, it's either $500 or we're going to impound the bikes. I said, well, how about we just take care of this here? And she's like, oh, well, okay, hold on a second. And she's like, oh, I need to call over the arresting officer.
Right.
And so this other motorcycle cop guy pulls up after about 5 minutes or so, and I'm talking to him in Spanish a little bit. I'm like, yeah, we're just going to, you know, let's just take care of this here. And I remember, you know, he kind of looks around. I'm thinking, you know, what are you looking at? And he's like, well, we can't do that here. There's too many cameras. And I'm like, he's like, so just follow me.
Oh yeah.
And so I tell my buddy, I said, Austin, if we start going somewhere that looks not good, we're just going to go.
Turn and burn.
We're just going to go. And so I follow the guy. I shit you not, we go 1 block and make a left, and we're on the road that I needed to be on.
Oh, shit.
Anyway, 1 block. 1 block and a left. And so we make that turn and pull over to the side. And he's like, okay, well, how much do you have? And so I had money throughout the bike, you know, but I only left $20 in my wallet. And I said, well, I got $20. He's like, well, what does your friend have? And I had the same discussion with Austin. I'm like, all right, just,
Right.
And so he was a little dinged up as well. And he opens up as well, and I think he had like 60 or 80. And I look at him like, dude, what? Why? I told you, don't put, I kind of look at him. I don't say that, but I look at him. And so I say, I think it was $60 total or $80. I was like, well, this is what we got. He's like, I don't know. Let me check. So he doesn't go on a radio. He cell phone in his ear, and he's calling somebody, obviously, to get approval to take that amount. And he comes back, and he's like, well, no, that's not enough. And I said, well, that's all we got. And while he had walked away, I looked, and on his windshield, he had the wheel with the wings coming off of it. And I had just recently got a tattoo of that. So in Spanish, I'm like, look, we're motorcycle brothers. And he's like, oh, that's pretty cool. And he's like, okay, all right, $60. So I pay him, and I've got a picture, that I took with me and Austin right behind me right as we go, and we're like fucking hightailed it out. Yeah. So yeah.
I've been hooked up twice there. Yeah. Well, once I was hooked up, and once they just. But the first time I was down in Mazatlan, and we were walking to a bar, and there was a guy in front of us, and he took off, and all of a sudden the cops come up behind us, and they're like, Coco? And I'm like, no. You bought cocaine off this guy. And we're like, no, we didn't search us. Like, we have nothing on us. So they're like, no, you did. You dropped it. And I'm like, well, then show us where we dropped it. So he hooks me up in cuffs and puts me in this little cell with like 3 or 4 other guys.
In a cell?
And then they makeshift cell outside of the bar. And so I'm handcuffed, and there's a guard standing out in front, and so they take my buddy, it's just the two of us, back to our hotel room to get all the cash we have. Yeah. They take him up to our room. We'd put all the cash in a safe deposit box, but we had, I want to call it 100 ones. I don't know why we brought so many ones, but
it's
it was for barter and trade.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And so they took like $100 out of our in-room safe.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'm sitting there, and I got to go to the bathroom. We'd been drinking, and so I'm like, hey, baño. And he's like, no. And I said, I'll pee on these guys. Because they were laying on the floor all whacked out. Yeah. And he's like, so he opens the thing, lets me out, and then in front of it, he goes, go right there. So I just, okay. But I was like, George comes back, and he's like, they took all of our money, our tip money, for taxi cabs and stuff. And buying, trinkets on the beach and things. Yes. So, and then the second time, so that was it, but they took our cash. The second time, a group of us were in Baja, and we were coming out just outside of San Felipe, headed to the Bay of L.A., and in the middle of nowhere, there's all of a sudden these luminaries, and it's the federales have set up a stop in the middle of nowhere. Like, we didn't see any other cars. Like, why are they out there?
They got to pay their rent.
Right.
That's why.
And we've got 3 kayaks on top. We've got all our fishing gear, and we are throttled. All right, and it's like 9 a.m. Yeah. We'd been driving all night, and my kids should not hear this stuff, but we get out, and there's just beer, and we throw them in the cab, the camper shell. Yeah. And we're just like, oh no. Here we go. And then my buddy thinks he speaks Spanish. He says, es muy viento. And I'm like, dude, shut up. Es muy viento. And I'm like, shut up. You're telling him it's windy. And I'm like, shut up. So they searched everything, and we're like, all our rods are going to be on, all the reels. Yeah. And ultimately, we couldn't really communicate, so they just said, on your way. And that was it.
Well, the stories I hear,
they shouldn't have even
it
let
really
us drive
makes me
off.
want to go to Mexico.
No money, but they were the federales too, so they weren't the local, like. Yeah. But even the federales will do it.
Yeah.
So sounds fun. Sounds fun.
It is fun, though. So, like, it's, I think.
You like Puerto Vallarta?
Yeah, but,
9 times out of 10, you're only going to get rolled up if you were doing something stupid.
Right.
So just don't be stupid.
You just blend in.
And, you know, some of us can blend in a little bit better.
Well,
than
is it,
others,
because the last, I'm going to call it 5 years, there's been this whole stigma around it's not safe.
Yeah.
Is it not safe?
No, it's totally safe. Yeah.
Because I haven't been down there for, other than Puerto Vallarta,
Yeah,
forever.
it's totally safe. So I've got some friends, Mexican friends, and they go down all the time. And probably about 4 months ago, she sent me a note and was like, hey, don't go down right now. I
Really?
was like, really? Okay. And so I guess there was, the government had arrested some people, and so the people were making a statement and making things very uncomfortable, and some shootouts in the street, you know, in places where you wouldn't have ever imagined.
In TJ or down in Rosarito? Or
It was
in
kind of all
Sonata?
over. Yeah, it was kind of all over.
Huh.
So when she told me that, I was like, wow, okay, yeah, I'm not.
Yeah,
going.
if she says it.
And then, so it had been a little bit of time, and I hit her up. I'm like, hey, is everything good? She's like, oh, yeah, because I saw that she'd gone down there.
Right.
And she was like, oh, yeah, no, everything's good. So that's when I blasted down there, and I think that's when Lance and Juan saw that I was down there, and that's when they hit me up. So
Let's do some
that was
tacos.
Yeah. So, yeah, I love it down there. I think, you know, just behave, and you know, the level of behavior, you can get away with a lot more there
Right.
and still be considered behaving
Right.
than here.
Right.
You know, so you know, just
So,
kind of behave.
where did you grow up?
In San Diego.
You did?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was born in San Diego. We moved away to Oxnard, Ventura area for a couple years, 2nd through 7th grade, and then right back to San
down.
Diego. And yeah, I was there the whole time. I went to San Diego State for both my undergrad and my MBA. And the only time I've really left was for flight school. It was down in the south in Corpus Christi, Texas, and in Pensacola, Florida, and then for deployments. But other than that,
So you've been like a coastal guy everywhere you go.
yeah, yeah. That's part of the reason why I wanted to be in the Navy. I didn't want to be in the middle.
Right.
That's like.
So were you down at Pendleton or Miramar or any of those?
I was in Coronado.
Coronado.
Yeah, so I was stationed in
Down
Coronado
at the,
the
gotcha.
whole time.
That's a
So
rough life there.
Very rough. Very rough life.
Yeah, I'd love to be in that naval base.
Yeah, it was good. So I was there. I showed up to North Island. That's the base on Coronado in 2000, and went through my first. So in flight school, they teach you how to fly in, you know, training type aircraft, and then once you select for the actual aircraft you're going to fly in the fleet, then you go to a squadron. They call it the Fleet Replacement Squadron, FRS. We call it the RAG. And so that was there in Coronado, and so I showed up there in late 2000. Yeah, it must have been late 2000 because I got winged in April of 2000. Got through that fairly quick, and then got to my first fleet squadron in early.
So you're flying
2001.
fixed wing aircraft
To
first?
start, yeah. So everybody in the Navy starts in fixed wing aircraft. They're solid aircraft. You know, aerobatics. You can imagine. You know, we've only been flying this aircraft for how many hours? I think it was like 110 hours total that I did in that aircraft. And so about halfway through that, they start sending you out on solos. And one of the solos they send you out on is an aerobatic solo. So they're like, here, take this airplane and go do
tricks.
rolls and loops. And like, are you sure? Like, you think this is a really good idea?
Right.
You know, they're like, oh, we've been doing it for 100 years. You'll be fine. You know, we wouldn't let you do it.
Yeah, we know what we're up to.
Yeah. And so,
That's how they're testing your chutzpah.
yeah. And I didn't
So they have
really
a
like,
training aircraft up there watching you?
No. You just go. You just go out to the working
So they
area.
don't know if you even did a roll.
Yeah, and I didn't do a whole lot of them.
Okay.
Yeah, not a whole lot of them. I did a few, like the rolls, the barrel rolls. Those are easy.
Yeah.
You just and it just goes. I did a loop. The first one went pretty well. I'm like, oh, that's kind of fun. And so then I was gonna do, so loop up and then roll over and go
Right.
this way and then and so I made the loop, got up top, and then went to go do something else, and I ran out of airspeed and kind of stalled and did a spin, not on purpose. And so recover from that, because that was part, like we would do spins, not a huge deal. But when you're not really planning on it,
Right.
So it's like, all right, opposite rudder, stick all the way down, and it recovers. And I level out, plenty of altitude. I'm like, all right, I'm cool.
So you got to stay calm.
Yeah. And so I'm like, all right, I'm just going to kind of cruise around. So I just, kind of flew up and down the beach a little bit and went home. That was it.
Think about like in World War II, the Japanese and the Americans out over the ocean, and they're these young kids with these machine guns in these planes, and they're just crazy.
Yeah. So that was enough of that. I realized.
So then, why did you end up saying, "I want to be in a thing that has a rotor and a back tail rotor, and if one of those goes out, I'm hammered."
Yeah.
If I lose an engine, I could probably work that.
But helicopters auto rotate. Right?
Yeah, but
in theory.
In theory?
In theory. It's just a less violent crash.
Right. You crash, but...
Yeah, you crash, but a little bit less violently. No, the truth of the matter is...
you can glide, and you can not in a helicopter. In a fixed wing, you've got more opportunity for survival, I would think.
Yeah, and in all the fixed wing, you have a parachute.
Right.
We never... No parachute. In a helicopter... No parachute. So I remember my wife at the time, she was like, all right, so if you're going to crash, where's the ejection seat? How do you get out? I'm like, well, we don't have a parachute. And she looked at me, she's like,
the
what?
canopy's here, and if I go up through there and they're still rotating, I'm chopped.
Yeah. So you're committed.
Right.
You're going in. You're going in.
So my uncle was a helicopter pilot in Nam, and I always remember this for some reason. He would be out water skiing or whatever, and he'd lift up his arm, and he had an O positive. So in the day, they tattooed your blood type under your arm.
Yeah, I didn't have mine tattooed on me, but I had it written on my boots and a patch that I had on the side as well.
Isn't it on the dog tag?
We didn't wear the dog tags.
No.
Some guys did, but I didn't. Like
so why did you choose a helicopter?
The Navy chose for me.
They did.
Yeah. I thought for sure I was going to be Maverick.
Right.
And I was going to fly F-14s, and turns out my brain thinks really well at about 100 to maybe 140, 150 knots. Above that, not so well.
Right.
So I'm really, really good at about 120, 150 knots, but beyond that,
So do you fly today?
Yeah, so I didn't fly for quite a while after I retired. And just fairly recently, I kind of got the bug again. And, I was saying a lot over this last year. People asked me, like, okay, why are you riding so much? And I would kind of half-jokingly say it's the closest thing I can get to flying a helicopter low level, riding the motorcycle. And in the last, I don't know, it's only been about 3 months, I started to realize that the void still wasn't really being completely full. And it occurred to me that I was trying to fill a void with riding a bunch, but I'm still perfectly capable
Of flying.
of doing the thing where the void was created.
Right.
So I just decided that I was going to start flying again. So
and are you doing fixed wing?
So for now, I'm doing fixed wing
Yeah.
stuff. It's cheaper.
So you can go rent a plane.
Yeah. So I can.
It's like being part of a yacht club. You can go get a plane, pay for the fuel.
Yeah, just jump in a plane and go. So I've been flying with instructors a little bit just to get comfortable again, kind of, feel proficient, comfortable. And honestly, I hadn't flown a fixed-wing airplane consistently since 1999.
Wow.
So I went, I don't know, it's probably
So it's been a spell.
Yeah.
It's been a minute. So the first time I go up, a month ago, 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. So I just walk into this schoolhouse thing at the airport near me. I'm like, oh, those airplanes look cool.
Palomar or where?
No, it's Gillespie.
Okay.
And so I'm like, all right, I want to start flying again. They're like, oh, you want to be a private pilot? I'm like, no, I'm a Navy pilot. I've got, commercial instrument, all kinds of ratings, licenses. And I go, oh, okay, should be good. And so they put me in with this lady, and we go up and fly. And she's like, oh, well, you're lots of experience. You'll be fine. So she just kind of sat over there. And so we're out flying around a little bit. And she's like, all right, well, you want to go back and do some landings? I said, okay, yeah, sure. So we go back, and, we're kind of on a long final. And I'm kind of looking over like, so do you want to do this first one? And she's like, oh, you'll be fine.
You're right.
And I'm like, okay, sure. Like, what could go wrong? And so it's like riding a bike. I mean, the first one wasn't the prettiest.
But you got it.
But yeah.
Feathered everything out.
It all went just
You're
fine.
sitting here.
Yeah, it went just fine.
Right.
I think I saw you posted something, from the cockpit, and you were talking, I've been flying for longer than this instructor's been alive, and they're trying to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, so I was trying to say, like, okay, I'm going to go do this. I need to put my ego aside, and because it has been a long time. And, it's very, civilian flying is different.
Way different.
Than military flying, and I hadn't flown a fixed-wing aircraft in a very long time. But yeah, it's coming back. It's a lot of fun. So I don't know exactly where it's going, but I know.
But you don't need to know where it's going.
Yeah. So my plan is to get about 50 hours. Most of that will be in the fixed-wing stuff because it's a lot cheaper. I'll probably do like 10 hours or something in a helicopter.
So you could jump in a helicopter right now and fly it.
Yeah, much easier than
Really?
Oh yeah, well that's what I did. I flew helicopters for
forever.
20 years. Like that's
Wow.
That's natural. So that the tendency that I have to fight landing an airplane is when you land a helicopter, you slow down to zero. In an airplane, you obviously don't want to slow down to zero. That's bad. So that's the tendency that I've been having to fight the most. Is you're supposed to come in, aim for the runway, get down low, level off, and then, slow down and land. Well, every time first landing I come in, and I, like I'm trying to flare the nose of the helicopter to slow down, and so I have to really fight that. And the instructor that I've been flying with recently, he explained it in a way that just made sense. And so once he said that stuff, I'm like, oh, this is good. Yeah, nailed it. Like, okay, I'm in it.
I saw a video of a helicopter come in hot, came around a corner and landed, skid. I mean, did it on purpose. It wasn't a stop. It was.
Yeah, I was probably doing an auto. So if you've got skids on the aircraft, when you do the auto, civilians train to kind of like land with forward airspeed to keep going. Military, we train to land,
drop.
Come in, land,
Boom.
0, 0, 0.
Have you flown Hueys?
I've never flown a Huey.
Never flown a Huey.
No, that would be a lot of fun.
So, are you in demand being a helicopter pilot? Like after Vietnam?
I don't know. I hope so.
People were bringing them in like, hey, we need you to fly for the water company or this or that,
Yeah, so
but maybe your void ends up being something like that, or like I had a buddy that his void ended up being filled by search and rescue, and that's how he maintained his hours as well. Yeah. But he was out looking for people and helping, and that helped him.
Yeah. Well, even like all the firefighters that fly the helicopters, a lot of them were military. They had to be.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm putting feelers out for that kind of stuff. So if anybody's hiring, let me know.
But you have to be in San Diego or
no,
coastal.
No, I'll go anywhere. I'm at this point, like I'll go. It's fine.
Well, we can't have you leave the state.
Well, it wouldn't be full time.
Gotcha.
I most certainly don't want to.
Let's make that clear.
Yeah, I'm not going to be the Chopper 8 guy flying Monday through Friday.
Right.
Like but you're married.
Yeah.
So would your wife go?
Probably not. No. And these would be just like short-term contracts.
Right.
So if I went to fly in Montana. So I've got a couple of buddies that are linemen, power line guys. And they've been sending me links and like, hey, you need to talk to this guy. And so one's in Utah, another one's in Colorado. So I mean, if it turned out to be some contract work, that would be rad.
Right.
The line flying is a lot of times in the MD-500, so the helicopter that Magnum PI. You guys watched that?
Right.
So that was the first helicopter that I fell in love with. Yeah, that, and I've never flown it, but man, I would fly for free if anybody would let me.
Well,
I will fly that for free, because I love that.
That helicopter's been around a long time too, because that was in Vietnam as well.
Yeah.
Well, talk a little bit about, so how old are you when you become this full-fledged Navy pilot?
I got started kind of late. So my flying stuff, I started really early. I actually started flying when I was 15. And back then, you had to be 15 and a half to solo. So I was 15 and a half, a little bit, I think it was in July when I solo. Birthday's in June, so a little bit more than 15 and a half. But then I took a detour. I was a stockbroker in San Francisco for a number of years, and then came back and went back to college. And so that detour, delayed a little bit. So when I actually started flying for the Navy, I was a little bit older than most. So I think I got my wings in 2000, so I would have been 28 at that point. So most of the guys are 25, 26.
So is that how Papa
like
Juan comes around?
I think so. Yeah, I'm kind of, I like sitting in this room because I don't feel old.
That
Right.
guy would make you feel old.
But yeah, most of the kids that, as you guys know, that are riding around like us.
He just said we're old.
Yeah.
He said you're old. He said we're sage.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
so yeah, I was a little bit late getting into that.
What do you got there?
Well, he said something about 1999, and I was 3 years old in 1999.
Yeah.
Wow.
You want any comments we should?
We did have a
offer
couple
you?
questions. So Wisconsin Backroad Biker was also a Navy pilot, or a pilot myself, he said.
Nice.
And he was wondering what your first training aircraft was,
It
or
was
plane.
a T-34 Charlie.
Okay.
Thank you, New Belgium.
Yeah.
Thank you, New Belgium.
Got a couple new.
They dropped off a
What is
like a
that?
flavor
Was that-
pack,
had the
the
same
Voodoo
one?
Vice.
There you
They're
go.
all. I never caught myself
Yeah.
buying them, and now it's all I drink. But anyway,
And this is Danger Beach, and I had one of those Vice that you had, which is really good. Actually.
Okay. We also had a couple other questions. One, Landon Smith says Batwing Gang, so he must know you
Yes, Landon,
because he
yeah.
rode up here from San Diego. And for those of you that don't know, not only is it a little chilly out right now, but it's about 3 hours today.
Yeah.
Probably, hopefully quicker on the way home because it's late,
Yeah.
no traffic.
Yeah. It's going to turn out to be a long day, but that's okay.
Also, do you happen to know Mauricio Aceves? He said something in Spanish while you were mentioning Mexico, so I thought maybe he was one of your buddies,
No.
but
Maybe he saw the video with you and Lance and Juan.
Could be.
Yeah.
could be. Other than that, I think everyone's just chilling out, listening to it.
All right. So you're 28.
Mhm.
You get your wings.
Yeah.
And when's your first deployment?
Right after September 11th. Yeah, so I showed up to my first fleet squadron there in Coronado. I think it was early 2001. So I'd got some of the basic qualifications done, and so I remember I was a division officer, so I was a divo. So as a young officer, that's pretty common. So like I was in charge of a detachment of maintenance guys, so the mechanics that were working on the helicopters in our detachment. And so they would start super early, so I would get there early with them. And I remember being in we call it a det shack. It was supposed to be a temporary shack that 25 years later was still there.
Right.
We were in this det shack, and I remember hearing a lot of commotion going on. It was pretty early, and so I popped my head out, and I'm like, "Hey, what's all the commotion?" And I remember somebody saying, "Yeah, a Cessna just crashed into a building in New York." And I was like, oh, wow, that's odd. I wonder how that happened. But the only TVs in the squadron at the time, there was one in the duty office, which was downstairs, and then there was one up in the ready room upstairs. So I go over to the duty office, and it's just a little TV, and I'm looking at the TV, and we all remember the site,
Right?
Yeah. And I'm like, that's no Cessna,
Right.
that's no
Yeah.
Cessna, and and so then I walked away, and then I remember hearing a bunch of people running by, and so I go. Everybody's running over toward the duty office or up to the ready room to watch the TVs there, and that was right after the second plane hit, and so it was at that time everybody knew, okay, this isn't right. And so I think a few of the most distinct memories that I have of that day is I remember getting flash message traffic. So flash message traffic is like the highest level message traffic that the military would send out. I would venture to guess that there hasn't been flash message traffic since World War II. I doubt there was any in Vietnam. Right. But I remember getting, we had computers at the time, but pretty basic. And I just remember seeing the message traffic coming through, and flash and read it, and they were saying, like, all San Diego military personnel, call your families, call everybody, tell them to stay home. Don't go to SeaWorld, don't go to the zoo because they're under attack. Like, that's how garbled everything was. We were actually getting message traffic saying that SeaWorld was going to be attacked. And
well, they didn't know. I mean, places that gather with larger gatherings of people no one knew what the hell was going on.
Yeah, it was chaos. And luckily, I had got there pretty early. So I had some friends that were stuck. So obviously they shut down the base. Nobody was getting on or off. And I had friends that were stuck on the Coronado Bridge for 6 hours.
No
Jeez.
way.
Yeah. So it's a crazy time. And so everything, obviously all the airspace all over the U.S. was shut down. And it was about a day, maybe 2 days. And then, there were ships at sea, ships off the coast that needed stuff, and taking certain people out to ships. And I remember we had to call NORAD. So NORAD is the underground thing in Colorado, like World War III goes off. That's where everybody, that's where the president's going to go and control. We had to call NORAD to get permission to fly. So it was pretty strange, pretty intense time.
So something big's going on.
Yeah. So yeah, it was.
Well, they shut the airspace down.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything was shut down. It was kind of eerie. It was kind of. Yeah, it was strangely quiet in the skies. But yeah, then it was. I deployed. When did I deploy? I think it was like 3 months later, 3 or 4 months later, something like that, on a ship. And normally you go and stop in Hawaii, hang out for 3 or 4 days, make bad decisions, and then stop at some other tropical places along the way. We stopped in Hawaii for 24 hours to unload a bunch of stuff, and then just beeline straight to the Middle East. And we sat off the coast of Somalia and Djibouti for a very long time. It was very, very, very
So
hot.
when you went into Hawaii,
Mm-hmm.
do you go into Pearl Harbor?
Typically, you would. This time, we only had 24 hours, so they let us go in.
So you could go.
And we took full advantage of that.
Yeah,
Of
sure,
those
leave it
24
there.
hours, and it's amazing how many bad choices you can make in just in a 24-hour period.
So
but-
you're sitting off the coast of Somalia, and what are you running exercises to keep you out of?
So we were keeping an eye on some stuff, some bad guys in Somalia, Djibouti at the time, and then there was also somebody that the U.S. was very, very interested in Yemen. So we hung out there, and we were just waiting, to get the
So
right
were you
intel
ever at
to
a
go.
base on soil?
No.
You were always on a ship.
We were, for that one, always on the ship. We went into Djibouti for we'd go in and land and do some stuff there, but yeah, we're just on the ship.
We went on the USS Hornet one
Mhm.
New Year's Eve a couple years back. Can't believe how huge it is.
Yeah, wow, and that's small.
And that's
That's small. It's like
small-
gigantic.
So the first ship that I deployed on was the USS Bellewood. So it was kind of a smaller version of an aircraft carrier. So it was designed to carry a bunch of helicopters, Marine helicopters, and Harriers. So smaller, but even that, seemed massive at the time until I got on a real aircraft carrier. And yeah, it's just the size is massive.
It's a city.
Yet everywhere you go, every space you're in, you feel
Right.
like, because you're on board with 5,000 of your closest friends.
Right.
So it literally is a floating city.
Wow.
So
Insane.
yeah. So that
Well,
was,
back
that
in
was
the day,
first
the USS Enterprise pulled into the bay in Anchorage and dropped the power lines and lit the city up after they had a massive earthquake.
Oh, really?
They regenerated the whole city.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's a long time ago. But
Yeah.
so you're out on the ocean, you're deployed, you're away from your family.
Mm-hmm.
Is this when we start invading now?
Yeah. Well, that had already.
So that had taken
Yeah. So
place.
that we started invading or went into Afghanistan in October.
Right.
And so the guys that did that were, we call them Tier 1, kind of super high speed guys. Those were the guys that I flew with my last time in Iraq. But yeah, so there was a lot of, not a whole lot of people, but some very,
Right. It was speed.
yeah. So we ended up, we got somebody that we wanted out of Yemen, but the irony is we left, and we had been at sea for 110 days straight, which, before that was like record breaking, like 110 days of just sailing off the coast, and it's 120 degrees. My stateroom was on the skin of the ship, so my stateroom didn't matter. I mean, it was just hot. It was always just hot. A lot of time to just sit around and contemplate life and choices.
Right.
It was kind of nice. It was still early on that things weren't so, I don't know how to explain it, like high tempo, and everybody was all super spun up.
Right.
So I remember I was able to go and sit out on the outside the skin of the ship and find a quiet place and hang out and read.
Meditate.
Yeah, just kind of hang out and stuff. So, yeah. And
So that's your first deployment.
Yeah.
You mission accomplished. You're back, and then
yeah, and then God, what did I do after that? So I enjoyed all of that stuff so much. It was actually on that very first deployment I started reading. I love to read. I read constantly. And I was reading some books about some old Navy Vietnam era helicopter squadrons, HAL 3, and the stories of things that they did was insane. And so I decided on that deployment that whatever I do career-wise will be aimed towards getting there, getting, being able to fly that kind of stuff with those kind of people. And so that was 2001, 2002. So for the next 5 years.
In the first deployment, I don't know if this is the right terminology, but are you like chair one? Are you the?
Yeah, I'm junior. So I was helicopter H-2P helicopter second pilot, so I was just still learning and training and on these deployments. It's not just go fly. We're studying. So we'd fly for a couple hours, 2, 4, 6, 8. I mean, I think one of the longest flights I ever did was on that deployment was 10 hours.
Really?
But you come back and you got to study. So we'd have to study nonstop, and we would we'd have what we called mock hack boards. Hack is helicopter aircraft commander, so that was the goal at the time, was to pass that board and be able to be the aircraft commander. So the amount of information that we had to study and memorize, I mean, it was, our NATOPS was kind of the systems, emergency procedures, Bible, was like that thick, and we had to have that thing basically just memorized.
Wow.
And all the emergency stuff we had to have memorized verbatim. It wasn't like, oh, okay, well, if you lose an engine, you kind of do this, kind of do that. It was verbatim,
right?
Memorized verbatim, and we would have to we'd have to be able to draw like the entire electrical system from memory.
Wow.
So yeah, that'd be great. So they would put us on the schedule for some training mock hack board and come in and just make us feel like absolute idiots. And
of course.
Make us feel stupid. And
so while you're there doing all this stuff, were you into Harleys at that point?
No, not at that point.
So
I was busy.
Not
at that point. No, I was busy trying to learn that world.
Right.
So you come out of that. Are you on the next deployment?
Yeah. So I do another deployment there as an aircraft commander, and then way back then, the night vision goggles kind of training syllabus was also tied in with all of our special ops kind of stuff. So I came back and I was like, all right, I want to be that instructor and teach that stuff. So towards the end of that first tour, that's pretty much all I did was fly at night and leave out of San Diego and go fly through the desert, go super low level, 100 feet through.
How far would you fly when you
canyons.
say the desert?
Out to like Ocotillo and I think the farthest would be like near Yuma, not quite as far as Yuma, but
Gotcha.
like El Centro, all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of the Wild West at that time. We, in the platform, the helicopter that I flew, didn't have a lot of, set procedures for doing that kind of stuff. I just went out and just kind of made it up and did it. Yeah.
Right.
So
that's cool.
It was the first time I got myself in trouble. It was kind of a consistent thing, getting myself in trouble at every squadron that I was at because I just wanted to fly. They're like, okay, this is, you can go to here. I'm like, well, how about here?
Right.
Where's the boundary?
Yeah, and I was always pushing the boundary.
So, how long did it take after your service? When did Harleys come into your life?
Let's figure out the next. So, what did you do? Another deployment?
I've done
war?
lots. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I was basically deployed for almost a decade straight. So I was gone. I was gone a ton. So I did a few deployments to Iraq. Awesome, amazing experiences. And it wasn't until after I retired that I.
Okay,
so I don't know if you experienced any of this, but my brother-in-law's brother, he was a naval pilot as well, Air Force, I should say. He's a colonel or general now, but he remembers the first deployment to Iraq. They were dropping bombs, right? And then the next was it Desert Storm, and then right, then the next one, it was laser guided. So he felt like personally that, and I'm putting words in his mouth, I can't say it as well as he would, but when they were kind of dropping into these ordnance into areas that they thought were pretty good sites versus a laser where it was, and then there was not a lot of communication back and forth initially, and the second time he went out it was laser, and it was like, thank you, we got this, and it was so much more focused. But
and those had to be put on the ground by guys.
Yeah, but he felt like the first time he didn't know, and I don't mean to say it this way, who he could be killing.
Right. Yeah.
And in the second one, or not the second one, but the next time they were really pinpointing, he realized at that point that the job was being done better. And so his feeling about what was happening was less about when I land the plane, now we got to go look at what happened.
Right.
And was there casualty outside of what we wanted? And that
and that was
with
still
him a little bit.
Yeah, and that was still, I mean, that's still an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, sad to say, but there's
casualties.
There's probably going to be casualties. Like, I mean, before we would step out on an op, like, had the guy's picture. We knew exactly who we were going for. It was like, okay, he's in this house, but there are other people in the house as well.
Right.
So, yeah, that's,
So you're in a helicopter that's equipped with machine guns and missiles and basically fully loaded.
Yeah, fully loaded, ready to go. Most of the time we were the second time in Iraq we were taking like Army Special Forces or SEALs to insert them somewhere to kick in doors and go get people. So we had ordnance. We would use ordnance as well, but primarily.
So tell them again what aircraft you flew, what helicopter?
So I flew, the very first fleet helicopter I flew was the H-46. So it was an old Vietnam era tandem rotor.
The big dogs.
Yeah, tandem rotor helicopter. That one was very unreliable. That thing put me in the water.
Really?
Twice. I've been on fire. And that thing, engine that thing was just notoriously unreliable. And so the Navy finally figured out, like, okay, we need to
upgrade.
We'll get rid of this one. So I flew two of them.
In the water on exercises, or?
No, not on purpose. No. So there was one, both times it was lifting up off the ship. So on the LHAs, LHDs, there would be Marine helicopters and Harriers and all kinds of stuff going on. So they would put us on spot, but there'd be helicopter here, helicopter here, helicopter here. And so, you would just pick up, slide over to the left, and then go forward, and then go off and go off and do your thing. So the first time I got my boots wet, it's at night, on night vision goggles. It was actually just right off the coast of Camp Pendleton. It is amazing how dark it can get not that far off the coast when you're up off of Camp Pendleton, because there's not all the ambient light.
Right.
So if you're south or north of that, you've got 18 million people in Los Angeles with lights, and it creates kind of a horizon. So it's like, you can kind of see. When you're right off the coast of Camp Pendleton, it's a black hole. Like, you don't know which way.
Because that's probably what you're going to be like.
Yeah,
out.
But it wasn't fun. Didn't like it. No matter.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't care if that's the way it should be. Still didn't like it. But no, you pick up, go to slide off, and start to go. Right as I slide and start to go forward, one of the engines rolls back, and that was a pretty common thing. Was engines would roll back to idle, and so so we go. And it's dark, you can't see shit, and so I just settle down into the water. And so the procedure was kind of settle down in the water and hopefully
It'll kick
you
back.
can get the engine to come back on.
So it actually will float?
No.
No, he's holding
they
it
don't
up
float.
like this.
Yeah.
They don't float.
So did you get the engine started?
So the engine, so I was able to get the engine started again, but in the meantime, like, you know, there's water pouring in the back. The crewmen in the back are like screaming like,
what the
like
hell?
there's water coming in. I'm like, no shit. We're in the water. Yes, there's water coming in, and my boots got wet, and so I was able to kind of get it to come up out of the water. I actually got it out of the water and started kind of moving along as I got the engine to come back on, and then
got out
around and landed.
Jeez.
Yeah, very.
That was twice?
Twice.
The same kind of thing.
Same.
So
bullshit.
you didn't.
Same.
You were good.
Yeah, the second one it was during the day, so that one wasn't.
But I mean,
as
you
bad.
weren't.
No, I never.
Everything.
I
was-
never
you
had to
still
actually.
got- yeah.
I never actually had to go
Wow.
swim. But
So you're in combat, and you mentioned to me the other day as we were talking a little bit about PTSD, and
yeah,
and you don't even have to be in combat to have PTSD, right?
not at all.
Like, I mean, because
Not
you're
at all.
going through such a rigorous process with your mind and your body.
Mm-hmm.
Back to your whole reading the journal thing or the manual. Like, you have to be, in some regard, programmed so that when you're in harm's way, things.
You don't even think about it.
Otherwise, you're starting to think, and now it's
Yeah.
like,
You
oh
can't think
shit!
about it, yeah.
Like,
it's everything has to be just, you just do it. So I landed in the dirt, in the dust. We would fly in a formation of 6, 8, 10 helicopters in a dust bowl. So the first guy that goes in kicks up a dust cloud, to 50 feet. The second guy kicks up a dust cloud. So by the time, they would often put me in the back, because I guess I could land pretty well through that. But a lot of times I wouldn't even have a chance to like transition, to start to slow down, to start to descend before I was already in a dust cloud. Like, can't see shit.
right?
Can't see anything. And there's, 4, 6, 8 helicopters in front of you. And then you're landing, in front of somebody's house. So yeah, it just has to be automatic. You don't even think about it. So, but no, you don't. It's not even necessarily a combat related thing. So I, there was some stuff. My first trip to Iraq, I had some friends. I talked about it a little bit on a story a little while ago. I had some British friends that were. I was supposed to be leading the whole flight. We landed at one of Saddam's palaces in Basra.
Is that the power line thing?
Yeah, kind of in
Yep.
that same
Uh-huh.
that same location. We landed, and they went in for a little bit. So they're like, "Hey, we're going to be here for a little bit. Go ahead and shut down." So I shut down, which after this I would never shut down completely. And then they come back out. They're like, "Okay, we're ready to go. Start back up." And I go to start back up, and something, I don't remember exactly what it was that wasn't working. Normally I would take just about anything, but this, like, I physically couldn't get the airplane, the helicopter to fly for a little bit. So I'm like, "Hey, give me, it's going to take me about a minute to restart this thing." And they're like, "Okay, well, you got, you're going to make it up?" I'm like, "Yeah, we'll get up, no problem." They're like, "Okay, well, we're just going to go, and then you come and catch up with us." And like, okay. So as I'm down, heads down, trying to get this stuff going, I see like this huge flash of light, off in the corner, and I look up, and it's just a huge explosion. So the Brits that I was supposed to be leading, I was supposed to be the first one to come out of that area. They got ambushed with RPGs and surface-to-air missiles and blown out of the sky.
So fate had you on the ground.
Yeah. So that was a good one. There's
There's always that. Well, it could have been or should have been, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there were a few other instances the second time in Iraq that were pretty intense. But the one, the stuff that I think, so going back to, it's not just a combat related thing. The series of events that I think still, I don't think I know, that I struggle with the most still, was in January of 2010. There was a big earthquake in Haiti. Pretty much leveled, destroyed the entire country. Like 220,000 people died during that. And so we were sitting in Norfolk. So we had flown across the U.S. and then we were going to jump on the Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier, and we were going to take that and sail all the way down around South America and back up, and it was going to be now stationed on the West Coast. So we're in Norfolk, and we're supposed to pull out, I think, in like 2 days or something. And again, there's a lot of commotion kind of starts happening, and then I hear my name get, over the 1MC, and my CO's name and some other guy's name, like, report to here. So, we go over and report, and so they're like, hey, the huge earthquake, we're going to go. We're making preparations to leave immediately. Make sure you get everybody recalled onto the ship. If they're not here when we pull out, they'll catch up with us somewhere along the way. So we pull out and start going fast. And when they say an aircraft carrier can go fast, I still don't know, the official top speed, but it's
hauling ass.
Fucking fast. This massive thing. I mean, it seems to me that we got from Norfolk, Virginia down to Haiti in like
whatever, but fast.
Really, like the next morning, it seems like. Maybe it was a little bit, I don't know, but it was really fast.
That's a massive ship.
Yeah, it's an aircraft carrier. It's the biggest.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's civilian things that are.
Is it nuclear
bigger.
powered?
Yeah. But we were going to be the first helicopters, U.S. helicopters, to get there, and so we pull into the bay as the sun's coming up, and just immediately start flying out. We were the first U.S. helicopters to come across the beach there to start doing rescue operations.
Reconnaissance and rescue. And
yeah. So we were feeling very, very comfortable and confident. We had just come out of Iraq, so, we had faced all kinds of stuff, all kinds of crazy flying, and we're used to being able to do abnormal things with the aircraft. So we're like, this is going to be rad. We're going to go in, we're going to save them all, and it'll be awesome. But it turned out to be, a pretty daunting experience. The flying was somewhat challenging because we were always super overloaded with food or water, or going into certain areas to rescue people, to pull them out, and super challenging things. So yeah, there were a few things that I had to do there that so if things aren't going well and I have nightmares, it's 9 times out of 10 it's that
stuff that are
it's
there,
that, not the combat
and
stuff.
is it the devastation?
Yeah. I mean, it was just, the smell.
Yeah.
Never forget the smell. Everything was devastated. Everything was completely devastated.
But for the people that were left,
mm-hmm.
You're taking in supplies and to at least keep some life in.
Yeah.
Right? And that's hard to, it doesn't really probably justify what you're thinking on the other side of it, but it's humanitarian things that I think of too when people come together, I don't know that we think about sometimes these third world countries and how their infrastructure is not built so well, and there's not, and so if something that devastating happens, like it's obliteration.
It was, it was, I mean,
buildings aren't built great. The electricity,
I mean, the palace
great.
basically collapsed. I mean, I have pictures of us landing in the, basically on the front lawn of their version of the White House, and the palace is
gone.
Is falling apart, and so super intense. So those events are the ones that I think are the most challenging. And over the years I've thought about it is you're in combat, the people shooting at you on the ground, they fucking deserved it. You shoot at me, I'm gonna fucking shoot you too.
Right.
But the kid that the kid that died in the back of my helicopter on the way to the hospital ship, same age as my kid at home, that kid didn't deserve that.
Right.
So those were the things that I struggled with, and still.
And you still probably do, right?
Yeah. Still.
So is there therapy involved?
That's where the Harley comes in.
That's exactly what I was.
Yeah. That's where the Harley comes in. So I when I retired in 2016, it wasn't necessarily on my own terms. I mentioned I had been deployed for basically a decade straight. I was married before I went into the military, and being gone so much, and I volunteered for everything.
Another tour.
Everything all the time. Like I went back to back to back sea duty. It was like put me in, coach. I'm in.
Right.
Like they need me. I need to be there.
But also an addiction for you.
It was, yeah. And so my first marriage did not make it through. Did not make it through that.
How long were you married the first time?
17 years.
7. Well, that's a long time.
Yeah. Technically, by the time the divorce was final, it was 19 years. So it took a minute. For California, it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But a long time.
So that fucks with you too.
It does, yeah. I was gone for a decade. My kids,
right?
Like I was gone.
Right.
I'd come back, and they were taller, bigger, in a different grade. And I would like pretend to try to engage and know what's going on, but the whole time in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I gotta go. I gotta go.
Right.
Gotta go. I'm home.
And
you're there.
That you see in the movies are somewhat.
Yeah, a little bit. Like,
right?
Like it's like when you're there, you want to be here. When you're here, all you can think about is being there.
Right.
Like this guy up here, Chris Kyle.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how true all that story was that depicted him as the American sniper.
Mm-hmm.
But in the movie, it was he needed to get back.
You do, yeah. You got to get back.
That's where he felt most comfortable
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day.
It really was, and that's so so it was actually right after. So we do that Haiti rescue. We sail all the way down around South America through the Straits of Magellan, come back. And I think that was probably 3 months or something like that. And then we're home for 3 months, and then we're going out on another long deployment. And so it was that last long deployment when everything kind of, just, I could tell,
it was
I wasn't there. Yeah. And so it was on that deployment where things just kind of started falling apart a little bit. And I was in the same squadron that I was in for Iraq and Haiti. Like we had done for a Navy helicopter squadron, that was unheard of.
You did a lot.
A Navy helicopter squadron hasn't done things like that, since Vietnam. We did absolutely everything, and I was the operations officer, kind of leading a lot of this stuff and doing extremely well at it. And kind of set up for fitness reports, kind of your report card. I had a whole bunch of like really, really high marks. So it was basically like just don't fuck this up.
Right.
And you're gonna go places. Well, as the divorce started going, and my CO at the time was a very strange, very traditional guy, and he did not approve. The military, I can't speak to all the branches. I'm pretty sure they all are, but the Navy certainly had at that point become they called it intrusive leadership. So you had to know everybody, their personal lives, all their everything. And so my CO was like, this is your personal, your personal life is not acceptable, and sent me packing.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Sent me packing. And so it was the Navy allowed me, and not really, like I came back, and the Navy was trying to send me back out to like be on a ship somewhere, not flying. But I'm like, are you serious? Like this, we're here because I've been gone for a decade. Like,
Right.
Now's time to not be there. It's time to be here. And so I called in some favors from some SEAL buddies of mine, some captains, and got kind of pulled through the system to my last job, and just kind of hung out there and just went away quietly. And I think that's something that I have struggled with a bunch as well, because I didn't have the big retirement ceremony and
Right.
all that kind of stuff. It was just I just left. So when it was that time, I
So
left.
after all the years of service and all the stuff you'd done,
Yeah, I just left. I left
When
everything.
you're-
I left everything in my lockers, like just
So you have none of it.
left, just yeah. And so yeah, that was a very difficult
Yeah.
transition. And I've talked to a lot of guys that have got out of the military, and I've had very difficult It's hard to transition from military life to civilian life, because it's not the same.
Especially when you did that long.
Yeah, it's
You
not
know.
the same. It's your identity. It's who you are. It's what you do.
A lot of movement, a lot of action.
That's it.
You know.
And then all of a sudden it stops. And then you go to, the local grocery store, and you got guys, walking up to you saying, thank you for your service. And you're like, I don't even know how to respond. I don't know what to
Right.
say.
Right.
So yeah, it's a very difficult transition. You hear a lot, it's kind of has been in vogue for years, to, the whole thank you for your service, all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't really translate all that well into actual jobs or actual meaningful employment. You get a lot of guys that come back from multiple combat deployments, and we're used to a certain pace, and we're and employers, I think view that, and I'm generalizing, but I think a lot of employers view that as maybe not the best thing.
well, I'll speak from a corporate perspective, right? And in my lifetime of managing people, we always wanted structure,
Mm-hmm.
right? And whether that was a sales and service program, whether that was a lending program, maybe that's why you kind of like lending on the commercial side, because there is a little bit of structure in terms of how you can still manipulate but get someone approved. But and that same rule was, 20% of the people do 80% of the work. And so we actually, at one of the banks I was at, we started figuring out how much work was being done.
Mm-hmm.
And 30% of the people were doing 70% of the work.
Yeah.
And we figured out if we could get that 30 up to 40 to 45 to 50, the multiple that gave us would increase our earnings by X.
Yeah.
And we were excited about that on one side of it, but on the other side, we're still so sad about how, if we get to 50% of the people doing it right, you know, we're still at a loss of 50% of the people just being sludge, you know, grabbing the bottom feeder.
Right.
And so I think corporately and socially, and the rules are different for employers.
Yeah.
The largest employer in the country can be, and maybe not as much as they used to be, but can be pretty rigid.
Yeah.
You know, the military is very, and it's kind of gone a little bit away from that because of all the changes in society.
Yeah.
You know, but it's that structure and you know what you're supposed to do and when you're supposed to do it, and when you're on, and when you, right?
Yeah.
Interesting, though, when you brought up the thank you for your service. Because it's like, even when someone has someone in their life that dies, to me, it's like they hear enough, sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
It's like part of me doesn't want to say it.
Yeah.
I want to be the different one that says, almost like, it's fucked what happened.
Yeah.
Because then I've done that, and I've had people go, it's kind of cool to hear that.
Yeah.
But the thank you for your service, some guys want to hear it, some guys maybe don't want to hear it.
Or maybe no one wants to hear it.
Right. I don't, you know.
Because we say it. I mean, we
Or do we say it because we think we have to say it?
I think we say it because we think that these guys are fucking incredible.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how come I think.
I think a lot of the frustration for a lot of the guys that I talk to, and part of me trying to find a way to wrap my head around my service, and you know, I'm not a guy that's going to go volunteer in a soup kitchen or something. So, you know, I have an MBA, lots of finance experience, so I got tied in with a very large charitable organization out of Rancho Santa Fe in San Diego, lots of money down there, and they have a section for veteran organizations. So they asked me to come on and kind of consult and help them, you know, go through that stuff and help screen these organizations, figure out who should get money, who shouldn't, how much money they should get. And in that process, you know, I got to talk to a lot of vets, a lot of organizations that are doing it, and you know, the feedback that I was getting was pretty consistent. You know, it's the transition is very hard, and you know, it's not just a male thing. It's, you know, it's a male female transition issue. It's you know, things don't translate exactly, and trying to find a useful and healthy way to get people, to get vets re-engaged, and frankly to get them out of their head is a huge challenge. I mean,
I remember there was a guy, Jeff Tilton, that was down in San Diego, and he would put on freestyle shows for Red Bull, and Lance would go jump for him. But he had a big program, him and his buddy, where they would take vets coming out of the service in San Diego, and a lot of them would get on bikes. The first thing to do is they'd get a motorcycle and they'd go rip, and a lot of them would get hurt. Yeah. So his whole thing was, you go in his program, you spend the weekend or 4 days or whatever, and they did like safety courses on how to ride. Yeah. They kind of taught them how, because he said a lot of them would get on crotch rockets, and in the first week they're dead. Right. You know, because they're just. So that was a big thing for him, and that's kind of getting him back into. Yeah. Hey, you can get on that bike, but you got to learn how to ride it. Right. You know. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, we talked to Four for the Road and a bunch of other, and I think the MCs, it's a huge, because it's a brotherhood, it's a huge gathering spot for ex-military.
Yeah, and it's pretty common for club guys to you know, it's a pretty common thing.
But it's that brotherhood thing that's missing sometimes.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely. Yeah, it absolutely is.
so back to his question. So you ended up getting a Harley.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the first motorcycle you owned?
No, I rode some when I was younger. So I grew up actually on the back of my mom's bike.
Oh, wow.
My mom rode, uncles rode. So, you know, I was pretty used to that. I loved it. Some of the best memories that I have from my childhood are
On a bike.
You know, riding to events and pitching a tent, and, you know, it was just amazing.
That's amazing how a bike has changed so many people's lives when
Yeah.
you get on a bike.
Yeah.
You don't hear many people say, well, my life changed as soon as I got in that car and we would
Right.
drive around. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. No, I certainly caught the bug.
Yeah.
Certainly caught the bug as a kid. I rode some. I got a Kawasaki Ninja 250 when I was in high school.
Wow.
Yeah, and almost killed myself
Right.
on that thing twice. And so then I thought twice about it, and then had a girlfriend, so I was always driving a car because we were going everywhere.
Right.
And then, you know, off to other things. And I never rode. I didn't ride my whole time in the military. One, it's back
Tom
to that.
Cruise did.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Maverick did.
yeah. Some guys do. A lot of guys do. But I just didn't. I was busy studying, flying,
yeah.
deploying. You know, just was the last thing on my mind. But after I retired, you know, I was just like, man, I'm kind of missing something here. You know, in my head a bunch. Like, geez, what do I need to do? I was like, well, I need to go buy a Harley Davidson. So that'll fix it.
Right.
That'll fix everything. Yeah, not necessarily. But yeah, so I bought that gray silver lowrider that I have. I bought that brand new in 2017, and immediately, you know, within the first, you know, 6 to 8 months, I'd done like 15,000 miles.
Because
I
you
was
ride a
just
lot now.
gone. Yeah, I ride even more now. But
That
then
was your
I was
deployment.
yeah. So I was just like, I would just go. I would just like, I gotta go. And you know that scene. Well, I know you guys know that scene. When Forrest Gump is going through Monument Valley, gets to Forrest Gump Hill, and he stops, and he turns around, and he says, "Okay, I'm tired now. I'm gonna go home."
Right.
So I had that moment, riding around. I was in Northern California somewhere, and you know, it's like raining, night, and I pull into a gas station, and I'm getting gas, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? You know, like, I'm tired.
Right.
I'm gonna go home. And so, you know, I thought I had got it all kind of figured out and worked out, and came home, and that's got the business going a lot, which has, you know, kind of paid dividends now.
Right.
But I realized, you know, that I hadn't got it all figured out. So what did I do? I went and bought another Harley Davidson. I bought the bagger, and that's about the
That
time.
one will fix everything.
And that's
Just one more.
around the time when I started watching you guys.
Gotcha.
And that was part of probably the reason why I got the bigger bike. Was I'm like, man, they look really comfortable on those things.
We
They
are
can ride.
comfortable.
They can ride a lot of miles on those things. So I was watching, this was pre-Josh time.
Wow.
You know, so I remember watching you guys do a lot of the Arizona stuff, and I went on the website and looked at the maps and the discussions of all the places, and shortly after I got that bagger, I went and basically just did one of your routes. I went up and I stayed in the same hotel in Williams, and then Flagstaff, through Flagstaff, froze my ass off.
Yeah.
Going through, I was not expecting that. Was not prepared
Right.
at all. Got down to like 20 degrees going. I forget the you know, go through Flagstaff, and then down.
You may have went down through like Strawberry or Pine or something.
No, that was I eventually went down that way, but it was
Sedona, Jerome.
no. So
Prescott.
you go out of Flagstaff north,
Oh, so you're up the San Francisco peaks.
and then go down the other
89A.
side, and like Indian Reservation. There's I don't remember.
He was in Cameron, I think. He went up with it by the
Cameron.
Grand
but
Canyon,
if he went,
Tuba City.
So it was before you make the left to go on the east rim of the Grand Canyon, and before you make the right to go towards like Monument Valley, whatever. So
you're Kayenta or
Yeah.
something.
so before Kayenta, yeah. So going north on whatever road, you make the right to go on whatever highway that is towards Kayenta. But anyway, so I'm coming through there.
Did you get the page?
89A.
Yeah, it was the 89A.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly where I was, but I'm like, oh, the sun's up. Like, it's going to warm up any minute now. And it just wasn't. And I got to the point where I was frozen. And I had, like, layers in my bag. All I had
These
to do
guys said
was
just
stop.
to layer up.
Yeah, I just had to, like, put some stuff on. I probably would have been fine. But so I pull off to this gas station. And I swear I had to sit there for like an hour. Like they had the hot hand dryer things. I just kept like pushing that thing, drinking coffee. The person that was there at the like nobody else is in there, and I just keep going over drinking more hot coffee. And I finally warmed up, and
There
off
you
I
go.
went and through Monument Valley.
Yeah.
And then I was gonna go to Four Corners, but it was still shut. It was shut down, and I ended up coming back around and going down. Devil's Highway. I forget what is that, the 191 now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
the 666.
Yeah. So I came down
Morenci.
there. Yeah. Came down through there. There was still some. This was in October, hence why it was so cold.
Yeah.
And I think I got through that road, and like it had snowed a little bit a couple days before, but it had melted enough. There were a few cold spots that I got through there, and ended up spending Halloween night in Tombstone, and then ripped back. So
Wow.
yeah, that's kind of when the bug. I was like, all right, and I did that by myself. I was like, oh yeah, I got this.
Right.
That's a nice trip.
This is for me.
When we left Page, the last trip we were on, we all were in 16 degrees, and we were
Yeah,
on the
I told you about
intercoms
that.
talking, saying, okay, if it's 16 and we're going 95 to 100, it's got to be 8.
Yeah.
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 I think it's the 491.
Yeah.
It kind of hurts, but we had these jumpsuits on.
Yeah, I saw the
So-
jumpsuits.
so-
Yeah.
Tell me this. So the Harley motorcycle's been a release for you.
Mm-hmm.
If guys don't know how to ride, can't ride, is therapy good for them? Does it just depend?
I think it. I don't know. So like I would say, the VA.
Well, I'm going to go
Has-
there next. So,
Yeah.
but is
Yes, I think getting on a Harley is
no, but
good.
is therapy good?
I
I know
so.
getting on a Harley is great.
Yeah. I think so. Let me just say that.
And then I'm going to get into like what the hell is going on with the VA?
Yeah. So well, I would say the VA has done very, very well. So when
They have.
the VA has certainly changed. So the VA used to call me all the time, like, all right, you need to be here. You need to, go to this and go to that. And where I kind of realized that I wasn't going to get much out of it was the therapist that they set me up with was a very young, this isn't going to sound right, but a very young female. And I just didn't feel like it.
Understood.
Yeah, like she really understood. I know textbook-wise, she knew everything that should be said, and.
But there's
I have
nothing
no
wrong with
doubt.
saying that because that's how you felt.
Yeah,
It's
Right.
just real.
It just
And that's
didn't-
why I'm trying to. So
Yeah.
like, it
And so
probably
it
just
just-
depends, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I don't think I gave it a little bit of time. I probably could have given it a little bit more time, but it just seemed easier to get on my Harley and run away from everything instead and try to figure it out in my head.
But you're putting different memories in your head.
Yeah,
You're training your mind to
that's
be
that's a
like,
good point.
I'm out, here by myself. I'm having dinner, or I'm on the road with 5 guys and going to Sturgis, and
And look at that scene, and look
Right.
at the,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
and then having to deal with the cold and having to deal with the heat. I mean,
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
You know?
It keeps you pretty distracted.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah. So it has certainly, the writing has certainly helped dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
And it's.
So you said you helped a guy recently that was about ready to go over the edge.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was probably a month or so ago. I've had a lot of guys. So at first, when first my Instagram page was really just the memes and the jokes, and kind of left it at that. But then I don't remember what the first time it was when I started sharing some of the military stuff. But it seemed to really, hit home with a lot of people. I started getting a lot of messages, and people asking questions about military stuff all the time, and then I just realized, okay, this, it feels good for me to share some of these stories. I'm getting, I don't want to say feedback, but I was getting a good response, like guys saying, okay, yeah, this is, if you're going through this, as if I matter at all, but guys would say, if you're going through this, then it's okay for me to feel this way as well. And so,
but you do matter, and so do we. We all do.
Mm-hmm.
We have Shannon writing with yogurt.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's military, but he put himself out there with mental illness.
Yeah.
And he didn't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, it's a medium where it's like, I almost despise social media
Mm-hmm.
because we're so caught up in it today. We have to use it to, continue to promote our brand.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's a way, and I think you said in a text to me, if you can help one person,
Yeah.
and it's through social media,
And it's all worth it.
then why not?
Yeah.
And it's hard to kind of, sometimes as men we're like,
Exactly.
well, sometimes we need a softer side once in a while and just be like,
Yeah.
okay, let me deal with this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the feedback I started really getting was when I went to Dallas to be on Jace's show. We just ended up going down this rabbit hole of military stuff and relationship stuff, and just kind of got pretty deep into some personal stuff. And I got a lot of feedback after that. And I think it was after that I kind of started kind of leaning into that. Because I would get people saying, like, okay, if you're going through this, you ride thousands of miles, through the night, like, if you're struggling with this, then it's okay if I am as well. So I had a little over a month ago, a gentleman, like, he had reached out a few times, and made some comments about things, and I could tell, you can tell pretty quick, like, okay, this guy's kind of struggling a little bit. So we would chit chat a little bit here and there, and then one evening, he reaches out and basically just kind of gets right to the point. He's like, man, I'm not doing well, and so we're just kind of texting on Instagram, and I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, I don't want to be here anymore. And so I hit the thing, and I call him, and he pops up on the screen, and he was taken aback, and so we just start talking. I'm like, dude, what's wrong? And so we ended up talking, for hours and hours, through the middle of the night. And he said he was ready. He was going to go. And so that one, that really struck home. It was like, okay, if this platform, and I've met some very amazing, very special people doing this, stuff and people that, you know, I want in my life forever. You know, but if this platform is able to help me make an impact on some people like that, you know, then it's worth it. You know,
Everything happens for a reason.
yeah,
So if this is happening that way, it's go with it.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. It was. So yeah,
Well,
he's,
and
he's
mentally
doing
for you
fine.
too. I mean,
It helps you. It helps them. It helps.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. Yeah,
but in the same vein, if something were to happen, you can't take that on.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
true.
So you've got to be able to church and state it,
Yeah,
like,
it's true. Yeah.
and that's hard to do sometimes.
It is, yeah. But I don't know. There was something about, like, we had chatted a few times, you know, so I had an idea of his state, and I could just tell
Yeah.
at that moment. Like, I
Right, you
could
knew.
just tell.
Yeah.
You know, I will joke around and interact with a lot of people through the DMs, and there's some people, you know, that I've never met, that, you know, I'm sure when we finally do meet, you know, it's like we will have known
Right.
each other forever.
Right.
You
Or
know,
they're gonna
there's some
punch
guys
you
in
the
Australia.
face that are gonna
There's some guys in Australia that are just hilarious, and we joke around about stuff. One's a pilot as well, you know, so it's just.
We can relate to that because we talk to a lot of people around the world, and it's
Yeah.
like, you know, they feel like they know you, and then
Yeah.
they're introducing.
It's kind of
themselves.
creepy
Yeah.
sometimes, you know. I mean, I remember the first time somebody came up to me at a gas station, you know,
Right.
and you know
Hey,
they
you're
were talking,
Papa Juan.
and they're talking about like, oh, so how's Austin doing, you know, and how's Chloe, my dog, and I'm like, oh shit, okay, yeah, but you know, it's what we do. We're putting ourselves out
Yeah,
there.
we've
for a
had
reason.
people tell us stuff about things we've done, and we're like,
Did
we
we
do
do
that?
that?
Whoa, yeah.
Yeah.
So I keep looking at this flag.
Yeah. So when I started flying again a little while ago, I went into my storage, and you know, I've got all these Foot Locker cases full of just stuff from military time, and much like, you know, when I retired and I just left stuff in a locker there, I've had all this stuff that was just there, and I hadn't looked at it in a very, very, very long time. And so I'm like, okay, I'm ready to jump back in. I need to start flying. This is going to be great. And so I start pulling these boxes out and start going through stuff, and I get down to one, and I'm like, oh wow, look at that. And I remembered that I used to fly on all of my combat flights. I had one flag that's mine that I flew with on every op, but then we started flying with other ones, and then we would mail them home and you know, tell everybody about the flight and stuff. And so I'm digging through stuff, and I find one, and I look at it. I'm like, wow, this flag I flew on July 19th, 2009 in Bash 2-1. That was our call sign in Iraq, was Bash. And so we had our 4 helicopters numbered, you know, 2021, 2223. It was, we were flying the HH-60 hotels. The BU number, so the serial number to the helicopter is 163785. And I guess I flew this thing to Mosul,
Wow.
Iraq. So I brought this for you guys to have.
We'll proudly display that.
Yeah.
So that is yours.
I think we're going to do a shadow box with
Yeah.
this stuff.
And then I realized I had a bunch of old patches. So this was one from one of my more favorite squadrons. This actually was the only squadron that I didn't really get chased out of.
Really?
If I had to transfer probably 6 months sooner, I would have been
You're
getting
done.
chased out. But I was able in the last 6 months to kind of to pull that one out of the water.
Well, this
But
is
that
cool.
was that. And then this,
HS4 Black Knights.
yeah. So that was my second squadron when I decided that I was really, like, I had to be gone. I volunteered for back-to-back sea duty and went to that squadron as what we called back then a Super JO. And that was the squadron, first
That's
squadron I
seen
went
some
to Iraq
action.
with.
Yeah.
And that flag is one that I wore pretty much the whole time. You can tell it's pretty worn out.
Yeah,
It's
these
pretty
are
dirty.
these are
So,
used.
Yeah,
Very cool. Very, very cool.
they've got a few.
We'll put those
few
up
hours
proudly.
on. Yeah.
So people may not know, I'm sure they do, but Jay's got it in the links. Tell them your Instagram.
I am Papa Juan El Gallo.
You probably already know that.
Yeah. I think so.
Probably, but and then if they're new seeing him,
Yeah.
is there any other medium they can?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I stick to Instagram.
And then just a couple more questions, and then we'll, give you a big hug and thank you. For
How
being
deep
here.
are we in here? Hour and a half?
Hour 10.
That's a good question. I've kind of been
So we
zoned
started
out.
at 5, right?
5:30.
Yeah, about an hour and a half. We do have a couple questions too that people have asked as well.
Okay. Do those first.
I guess so. Let me see. Let me
Or you want
cruise
me to
back.
Talk to them for a minute while you find them.
Yeah.
So Lance and I often say, "Thank you for your service." Is there something better we should say?
No. No, I think
Is
it's.
it thanks for what the hell you did, or
No, I think
Sorry.
it's. I think you guys genuinely mean it. Genuinely mean it. And maybe I'm, just being a little. I don't know.
No, but
I
it's-
certainly
I
get the sense that a
understand
lot
that.
of people say it because they feel like they have to say it. But
Right.
I think you guys genuinely mean it.
Well, I'd read something somewhere where if you just did this or something like this over to a military person, you don't have to say anything. And I
Tip
don't know
my
if that
hat.
even.
Even better. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I know a lot of guys really like it. But I've met just as many that.
Well, we didn't
don't
serve.
really know what to say.
So we have no idea what you guys have gone through, and I think that's one of we appreciate this country so much, and for people that have gone before us and that are still serving now and will serve in the future.
Mhm.
You think about this country and how great it is, even the challenges we're going through the last number of years.
Yeah.
So we're just appreciative that we can actually ride border to border and not be
Yeah.
pulled over at checkpoints
Yeah. Absolutely.
and whether you agree with what's happening in the politics the last couple of years or not, we still have this freedom about us that's been protected by people like you
Absolutely.
and other countries.
Being able to go around the world and see
Yeah.
Yeah.
how other countries are, it's, yeah.
This is the greatest country.
Absolutely.
And I always thought I would serve, but my age and where I was, I was too young for Vietnam. I mean, there was like
Yeah.
A void for a while.
there was a void for,
Yeah.
and that's when I was in. Whether I could have served just to serve,
Right.
but there was nothing really going on.
Yeah.
I've always been into history of World War II and Vietnam and
Yeah.
followed what's up and everything, but just wasn't in my cards, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
But I
That's
have
not a bad thing.
family members that have served and are retired, and they've seen battle.
Mhm.
And I know what they go through sometimes,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's a thankless thing, and sometimes the way, to your point, like the way things are done and people being released, and I won't say it, but I have a person in our family that kind of went the same way at the end of the day.
Mhm.
Like, after all this time and energy,
Yeah.
like, why aren't we celebrating that?
Yeah.
Versus like, okay, well, we'll get you through, but
Yeah.
Well, there was on the same thing we're talking about, so other people must think about the same thing. There's a show, Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on the show, they were all meeting this group of people in this living room, and this one guy said, "Hey, thank you for your service." And they went by, and Larry David didn't say anything. He just said, hey, hi, how you doing? My name's Larry, that type of thing. And then the guy went down the hall. He kind of made a face, and people were like, why didn't you say thank you to him? And he's like, well, he said thank you to him. Like, why,
Right.
It's kind of like that vibe, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe someone else was thinking about that same scenario.
It's a thing, for sure.
And he loves Larry David.
Yeah. No, I don't love him,
No,
actually.
the show.
Yeah.
You were watching it on the plane.
Well, I was done with my movie, This is awesome.
We appreciate you, and we do appreciate your service and what you went through and what you're going through and what you continue to go through. But I told you this in Sturgis, and we have you on camera.
Yeah.
We just appreciate you as a friend, and you were one of the early adopters for us.
Yeah.
And
then you ended up in a video.
We're talking over the phone, we're talking about parts, and it's like,
you did. My windshield on the bagger out
Well, wait a
there.
second. He ended up in one of our videos. Mm-hmm. He ended up in one of Lance's videos. So like you're
kind of adopted, I think. Right. Kind of adopted.
What were the questions?
Well, in the past hour and a half,
they
my camera's died, my nose has got more stuffy, and my vision's got a little bit blurry. But
your camera died.
What? Mine did. Yours is good. I plugged yours in. Wisconsin backroad bikers asked, were pilots allowed to ride motorcycles while in service?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's very complicated, like they're very much in your business. Yep. So that's part of the reason why I was like, I need you in my business.
Let's see here. I lost them. Go.
I almost think
you were responding to them.
There's a bunch of comments in between.
I almost think I hear
cross-eyed
rain.
by now.
Do I hear rain? Is it?
I hope not.
I hear ticking in the roof up here.
I hope not either. I mean,
Nah, you're good.
Look how you're. Oh, you can't see outside. Whatever.
Well, let's close it down then. But thanks for traveling up here. I think it's better to have you in studio.
Absolutely. And this is a huge honor for me. I mean,
and for us too.
Yeah, this is rad. I'm pretty stoked.
Well, you're stuck with this, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's okay.
I mean, it's also kind of funny. It's like the first year in Sturgis after we started the channel. We're walking down. Yeah. I mean, we're trying to figure out who each other is, and we're just walking down Main Street, and he's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "What?"
Yeah, that's on my Instagram. That picture is on. Yeah, I posted that one.
Well, right on.
Like, hey, this is rad. I never did. I did have a bone to pick, though. I didn't get one of the poker chips.
Well, we probably have one.
Well, I don't want it now. I wanted it then.
Oh,
you were like, I'm watching you guys on the video.
There's like 6 left in all of existence.
You're like handing out poker chips.
Well, we knew you'd probably be
I'm like,
in deeper than.
Where's mine?
Yeah.
This is like one of 10 left.
There you go.
Boom.
Oh, and you caught it.
Well, we appreciate you, man.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being on, and hey,
thanks for coming up.
Check out our videos. Get on the channel, watch them. If you haven't seen the series, they're really going great. Subscribe, tell your friends, all that good stuff.
And it's been a hell of a week. We got here Monday. We had a bunch of Black Friday orders. We were busy. Left Tuesday. We're back Thursday late. Our buddy comes up and hangs out. We're back tomorrow for one day, and then we're on a ride with Matt Laidlaw and his crew on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
So we're going to have a surprise, fun video. We're not going to tell you what we're going to do in the video, but you're going to see some cool stuff with
ripping, burning.
Yeah.
Yo. And also shout out
we'll have to figure out a ride with you one day.
Someday.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm ready.
What do you say in Canoga Park?
I was just going to say also a shout out to Jace because the Fast Life Garage is in the house.
Yeah.
And that is... We had some comments saying they found out about Juan through that.
Yes.
And now they're here, and now they're watching this, that, and the other.
That's right.
So.
Well, if they just jumped in, they have to watch it later. But Jace, great guy. He's part of our family. We were on his blog, gosh, way in the beginning.
I remember you guys doing that, talking about the road that you went down, the crappy rocks all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, he's a good dude.
There.
But, hey.
Awesome.
All right, y'all. We'll see you down that road.
See you down the road.
See you down the road.
Come on, Juan.